Okay. The board will now reconvene the public meeting at 6:34 p.m. And the first item on the agenda is Acknowledge of Women's History Month, and we're going to take turns reading that, starting with Bernie.
Whereas the Corvallis School District recognizes and pays tribute to the significant contributions made in our community by all people who identify as women and girls, which includes trans women and girls, and whereas the Corvallis School District affirms that students, families, staff, and community members should be valued for all aspects of their identities, and
whereas Women's History Month grew out of local efforts in Santa Rosa, California, began by the Education Task Force of Sonoma County Commission on the Status of Women by establishing Women's History Week in 1978 for the Sonoma School District and community, and whereas International Women's Day has occurred globally since 1911 in an effort to celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women, and
whereas women historically have been denied rights to vote, to own property, and serve in political offices and other leadership positions until the 20th century, and whereas trans women's identities have historically been criminalized and continue to be targeted by violence, and
whereas women have contributed to the history and collective future of Corvallis and Benton County, Oregon, and whereas Women's History Month provides an opportunity to continue the district's growth in learning about the many contributions of all women to the nation, world, and local community, and
whereas education is a necessary component for creating a more equitable and anti-racist community, nation, and world, and whereas the Corvallis School District has made a commitment to equity and anti-racism, and
whereas the Corvallis School District has a responsibility to honor and respect the diverse histories of our community, and
whereas the Corvallis School District believes each and every student must be celebrated and appreciated for the distinct and vibrant contributions made by sharing cultures, language, ideas, beliefs, and values within a school community.
Therefore, let it be resolved by the Board of Education of the Corvallis School District does hereby proclaim March 2022, as well as each March annually, as Women's History Month in the district, and strongly encourages students, families, staff, and community members to join in existing local celebrations, and encourage all schools in the district to help highlight this month in great appropriate ways, as well as highlight the contributions of all women to the local community, nation, and beyond, both historically and in current times, adopted by the Board of Directors of School District Number 509J Corvallis of Benton and Lynn Counties, Oregon, at its regular meeting this 24th day of February 2022.
And just, again, we read those every year to reiterate our commitments as a district. And before we move on to our next agenda item, I was going to take a point of board chair privilege to offer Ryan a moment to say something.
All right, thank you. So seeing members of our community here tonight in support of our trans youth and students, I want to make sure that you know that you're being recognized by being here and supported in our schools. We believe in supporting each and every one of our students who comes through our door day in and day out, and the richness that you bring to our community. So thank you for being here tonight.
And I'll add, as the board chair, that the Corvallis School Board stands behind the commitments and statements of our district for all students, including trans students. And we just wanted to also offer that since we have a lot of folk here tonight. And so with that being said, we're going to go to the agenda items of student representative reports. And we have CHS and Crescent Valley, College Hill. My allergies are really bad too. I'm so sorry. That's why I sound like this.
All right, some of our recent leadership events for Corvallis High School include candygrams that were delivered today. The polar plunge has been delayed until March due to the cold weather last weekend, but it's giving CHS fundraising some more time to raise money. The seniors recently had the opportunity to vote on the prom theme, and the results have yet to be announced.
Thanks, Cole.
New things happening at College Hill. Kevin Skillings, our construction program teacher, is working with the University of Washington to get certified as an OSHA instructor. Similar to a program like College Now, this certification will allow Kevin to award our students a safety and health fundamentals certificate. These are industry-based certificates that will help our students be more prepared and also more hireable by local businesses in the field of construction and other trades. Thank you, Mr. Skillings, for making this happen for our students. College Hill has entered a partnership with LBCC STEM Hub to offer financial support for our students as they engage in the career exploration process and solidify their post-secondary plans. Beginning next fall, we will be adding a new course, Personal and Career Development, that will be taken by all of our 11th grade students. In this class, students will explore many different career fields, visit local businesses and training facilities, investigate local collegiate offerings, and learn what supports exists in our community. This will set them up effectively to complete senior seminar in their 12th grade. In this class, students will firm up their post-secondary plan and take concrete steps to make it happen. This grant will allow us to provide materials, equipment, or training specific to each student's plan and set them up for professional success. And now to Eileen.
We are setting up a satellite library. We lost our library when our building was remodeled. So in order to circulate the books we have in our collection, we're starting a satellite library. It's a book cart that will be decorated and filled with books following monthly themes by students. And we had last week a yearbook fundraiser. We sold baked goods, handmade hats and wallets, candygrams and roses, and we raised $434 for our yearbook.
Great, thanks you all for your reports and updates on what's going on at CHS and College Hill. The next item on the agenda is our nursing update. And do we have Emily? And Melissa.
I'd like to start, and in honor of Women's History Month, I am very fortunate to lead a fierce band of nursing women who serve the Corvallis School District, and Emily is here as the nursing lead. And when I started this job in 2019, nursing was small, and there wasn't a lot going on as far as support for the nursing department, and we have grown and evolved into a vibrant, supportive group, I think, who are in all of our schools doing good work for our students and our staff. So I wanted to just make that shout out. Emily's joined today by two of our nursing team over in the audience there, Mandy Ryan and Emma Mateo. So I'm going to hand it off to Emily.
All right, so I believe you guys have all had the report that I submitted to the board. So essentially what I wanted to point out to you guys was the important work that we're doing within the school district to support our students in hopes to have better health so that we have better educational outcomes, because students are not going to be as successful without their health supported in the schools. Do you want me to review this? Okay. Sorry, I've never been to a board meeting before. This is first for me. Okay, so school nursing is a very unique field in that we are the go-between between students and parents and schools. So we do a lot of case management, essentially go-betweens between the doctors and parents, making sure that we have adequate orders in place to meet the health needs of students in the schools. Our district does a lot of education of staff so that our staff can better care for the students in the schools and their health needs. Our district nurses have taken on the task of becoming CPR instructors so that we can teach CPR to our staff members so that we can meet the state mandated ratios of students to staff CPR and first aid trained within the schools. I think that we have provided a really strong educational course on CPR. We've also had the opportunity to teach several students CPR and first aid this year, which has been particularly fun for us. Those have been some of our favorite classes to teach. And then also, I think like the biggest thing to note in this, I think, is the increased health needs in our community. So if you look at the data from the county, the chronic health needs of children in our community is increasing, and we're seeing that in our schools. We have fewer students in our schools, but the health needs are higher. So I've been here since 2018. I have more student delegations in my case than I've ever had in the time that I've been here with the school district, and we keep getting more. We just found out about 2 more last week that we're gonna have.
In 2018, Emily was one of 2 people in the nursing department.
Three. I was the third
Yes.
nurse hired when they had previously only had 2. And so now we have 5, and I think we have Melissa said, we have a really strong group of nurses with a very a vast array of experience, so that we're able to take on the extreme health needs of our district. But I guess any questions from you guys about the information that we provided, or
Questions or comments from the board? Go ahead, Chris. And then Bernie.
First of all, thank you. I have seen your actions in schools where you're working with very fragile students and difficult sometimes to maneuver around other kids and the whole situation, lunch times and all of that, busy offices, and yet you are very calm and you're managing very fragile situations. So I really appreciate that. My question is, do you have enough support?
So honestly, I would say no. We could do a lot more if we had more staff. So last year at the beginning of the school year, we lost a nurse who left the school district. And to kind of buffer that, 2 of us increased our FTE for the school year. This school year, we started back to our original FTE that we had been, so dropped the FTE back down, but never replaced that nurse. And we felt it immensely with not being able to provide the care, the quality of care that we feel like is necessary for our students. And we, like I mentioned, we have more delegations than we've ever had, and I would say many of those students that require that nursing care have more that they're up against. Their families are up against more, so it's even more time consuming to try to help and support those families. I believe we could do a lot more. I have all these hopes and dreams of things I would like to do, like partnering more with our school-based health center to provide better care and more access to care for our students. But we don't have the bandwidth to do that right now with the staff that we have.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful report. I just need, education on this one particular point I saw that's kind of interesting, is nursing delegations and medical training.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me who is being trained and And I see the standards, but who's getting trained and what are the duties?
So it depends on the school. The majority of our delegations that we have currently are either students with diabetes. So we delegate the administration of insulin to, it's unlicensed personnel is what you'll see if you read into the laws, but it could be anybody in the school from the OM, the AA2, educational assistants, whoever the school feels that can meet the needs of that student. Oftentimes we have multiple people in the schools that we have delegated that care to. We also train them on how to manage low blood sugars, which could result in an emergency or even death if not treated. And then we also have several students right now that are requiring feeding tube, G-tube feeds through a feeding tube. And so we train multiple staff members on how to meet those needs of those students as well. Delegation is people that often have no medical background. And to do that, first we have to make an assessment to make sure that that is safe to do in the school setting. Sometimes we determine that it's not, and then a nurse has to provide that care. And then there's very frequent follow-up and checking in with those people. So if you have multiple people.
Chana? Did you all have questions on this side too? We'll just go like this. Everybody has questions.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful report and detailed report, and of course for all the work that you do. It's so critically important for students and staff and families as well. So my question, it may get bounced over to Melissa or even to Ryan, we'll see, is a question around funding. And so looking at how the need is rising, which also changes the need for ratios, staffing ratios to change too, based on level and severity of need that students have. Is there any heightened funding that comes with that as the percentage of students who have increased need goes up? And so the state has a requirement around, and of course we want to meet or even exceed, if at all possible, that support for families. Is there any actual funding tied to those regulations as well?
No, and if a student who has that kind of complex medical condition is on an IEP, then of course we would get that kind of different level of funding based on that. But no, the state says this is what you should be doing, but we're not getting extra funds for that. Currently, our nursing team is funded out of our Student Investment Act, our SIA funds that come from the state for student success. So that's where we're holding all of those, that FTE.
Thank you.
So that was a good setup kind of to my question around the issue of funding and what we can bill. So my question is, since there's not a specific stream of funding that comes from the state that specifically says use this to provide, when you provide a service that constitutes a medical service, do we have the option to bill for that service, and do we do that?
So I am probably not the best to answer the billing questions, but I know that we do have services that can be billed for. We do have a Medicaid biller that works with the school district, and he does all of that. I also know that there's stipulations over what care can be billed and what care cannot be billed. So not everything can they bill for.
Okay. Sometime, not today, I would be interested to see how those are delineated in terms of what we are allowed to say is a medical service that we can charge for and ones that we cannot. And then I'd also be curious to see within the population of students that do have, that are either medically fragile or what was the other category?
Medically complex.
Medically complex.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the IEP provides some funding through special education, but not
Right.
from medicals. But anyway, I would be curious to see the percentage of students that are falling into those categories that are also hitting another category that would either be considered maybe at risk or vulnerable in some way. I'm just curious about the breakdown for that, but sometime. Yeah, thanks.
With I mentioned the new acuities that we're using to delineate who's medically fragile, medically complex. The ones that OHA and ODE and OSNA came out with last year take into account, students that are up against that have financial struggles. They take into a lot of those socioeconomic issues. So it was interesting when we were using those new acuity tools because it did help incorporate many of the things that cause us to be more involved in the care of a student.
One thing just to add, and I think it's just important to add just because of the legislative focus of it right now, is the also identifying changing the cap for special education and the number of students that districts can count in their census. But then the second piece is around high cost disabilities. And so there is an additional fund that we're advocating for expanding, and that's for students that oftentimes have a number of complex needs. Nursing may be a part of that as well. And reimbursement to the school district based on those costs. And so that's something that you'll probably hear about legislatively as we go through this session, but that's another area that we're emphasizing for supporting funding for students and supports.
So my question is about the naloxone training and distribution. I was very excited when the new law came into effect. Are the nursing staff the only individuals in the schools that can be administering this? Are there ratios for training? Is there opportunities for student training? So I guess one question, 3 parts.
Okay, Sammy.
So,
Thank you for the honor.
so no, the nurses are not the only ones who can provide naloxone. The laws have actually changed so that anybody who feels as though someone has experienced an opioid overdose can administer naloxone. And we provide that training to everybody that takes our Heart Saver CPR first aid and AED training. So it is incorporated into that training, which I think last year we trained around 275 people just in that year, and that training is good for 2 years. So we will be well over, 500 people trained within the last 2 years. And then the last part was student training.
Yes.
So the students that have taken our Heart Saver CPR and first aid class have been trained also in Narcan administration. And those kits are accessible to anybody in the schools. There's red boxes on the walls at the school that say naloxone kit or Narcan kit. I can't remember which one. And so anybody can access that medication. And we also have it in with all of our AEDs.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Sammy, go ahead. Hold on. How do we get Sammy on the mic? Are you just? I can lift it up, Sammy. Here you go. Good.
Thank you. So my question is, school boards usually don't really make decisions around staffing, and I want to preface with that. But my question is related to a legislative proposal that will help us advocate one way or the other. So there's 2 possible scenarios, and I want to hear perspectives from our nurse and also from our administrators around them. Right now we have 5 nurses, and we're advocating for funds. The question is, would we be better if nurses are supervised with someone with nursing experience or a nurse themselves? Or scenario 2, we would have funds to add an additional person on the ground to reduce the nurse to students ratio. Which one would be better for our students' outcomes?
That is a hard question. So if you look at evidence-based best practice, they're going to say nurses in schools should be supervised by nurses. I've been very fortunate to be supervised by Melissa, who's extremely supportive of nursing services. So we haven't had issues in our school district being supported. I can't imagine having a nurse administrator that was not on the ground doing work with everybody else. So I think even if that were the case, I think that person would also lighten the load for everybody else, because I can't imagine that would be any other way here, because we need nurses in schools with students.
Sammy, I would just add, thinking about a lot of my superintendent colleagues, keep in mind that Corvallis is about the 20th largest district in the state, and there's about 198 school districts. There are a lot of school districts that do not have the capacity to add another administrative position when they're have a difficult time finding an RN in general. And so I think that would be a concept in a bill that would be problematic if you think about the districts across the state.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We do have a legislative concept moving forward this session, so this is really informative and helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay, and I just wanted to thank you all for the work that you do. I've seen all the dental screenings and the hearing screenings, all of those things that students may not get otherwise for whatever reason that may be. I think that's a huge benefit to our community and to the students, and plus all the other things you all do. And just really wanted to reemphasize what you said about providing more services and the reality that schools do more than just in the classroom, and that's just the reality of public education, and it's really reflected in y'all's report. So wanted to appreciate the work you do. And then Ryan had something.
Yeah, I just wanted to share an example. So recently, a new parent coming in with a kindergartner next year contacted me with worry, and being able to say our nurses have lots of experience with that condition and will support your child felt really good. To be able to say, and then I know it felt really good to the family to feel supported, and that's the work that these folks do, and so it is definitely an important part of what happens in our school, so thanks.
All right, thank you, y'all. I forgot to also say we'll keep advocating for the funding part too that we have been trying to do. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the 2026 to 27 school calendar first read. And we have Nikki for that one.
I'm just here to answer any questions. You've all seen the proposal for the calendar. It is a change from previous year's calendar in that we have school starting before the Labor Day. We surveyed staff, and there was 75% agreement that this was a good move to make. And so that's the proposal before you. I did look ahead to several of the next years, all the way up through 2028. And just kind of ran this by Ryan, that it does look like the Juneteenth holiday. That's kind of what I'm planning backwards from, thinking about if we have snow days added on to the end of the year, we can run into the Juneteenth holiday, which might mean like we go to school 2 days and we have a day off and then we come back for a day. And so being able to finish school before that holiday, I think there's value in less breaking up of the end of the school year. So I looked ahead through 2028, and it looks like starting the first week of September is probably a good way to go until 2028, when September 1st is on a Friday, in which case it would make sense to start after the Labor Day. So just, I think it's a shift, but when I look at all the dates, this year we started on September 4th. Next year we're starting September 3rd. The proposal before you is to begin on September 2nd. So still always in September. Any questions about the calendar or how it was made?
Oh, go ahead, Ryan, and then we'll take questions.
I think it's just important to note that we know the tradition in this community is to always start after Labor Day, and we are bookended by two important holidays. And so the reality of fitting everything in between those two dates is a challenge. And so we have done our best to navigate that the last couple of years, but the reality is we're going to have to make some shift one way or one direction or the other. And I think that from my perspective, days in September are worth more than days in June. And thinking about those two holidays and coming back for 1 day or 2 days at the end of the school year, attendance rates and some of those pieces would be a challenge. So I think it makes the most sense. And I know that it breaks tradition with what we're accustomed to in this community.
Thanks, Ryan. I still think we need a 2-week spring break, but that's just me. That'd be nice. Okay.
Can I have a motion?
Did you have your hand up, Sammy?
Yes, thank you very much. So just to clarify, we're talking about which Labor Day, the one that's coming up in 2025?
The 2025 calendar was already approved, 25-26, sorry. And so in the upcoming academic year, we'll start on September 3rd. And then the proposal before you is for 26-27, and that has us starting September 2nd. I think sometimes the idea of before Labor Day seems like, oh my goodness, that's so early. And it really is just going from September 4th this year, which was after Labor Day, to September 2nd in 2 years, which is before Labor Day.
Thank you. So I just want to highlight the folks who will have vacations planned, probably they will have ample of time, more than a year and a few months in addition to that year to plan. That being said, we all know when we're used to certain habits, more awareness would be important. So I'm curious, especially with Oregon State University constituency might be one of the largest impacted or maybe surprised by that change. I would be curious about what coordination and communication we can initiate, not only for existing parents, but possibly incoming faculty or incoming student parents who might need to really make plans accordingly. And I think we have lots of time to plan for that.
Yeah, I think we have maybe like 18 months notice, and can work with Kelly and communication to make sure that everyone here in our community knows about this change for the 2026-27 school year.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Shauna.
Sure. Thanks so much. Thank you, Ian, for your thoughtfulness and planfulness, as well as involving staff in really looking at, does this work for them as well, even this far in advance. My question builds off of Sammy's around neighboring school districts. I know in the past, as you've set calendars, you've also looked at how does this align with Albany, with Philomath, with neighboring communities. And I was thinking about that too in terms of staff, who we know staff, some live here, some live outside of this community, have their own children either here or in Philomath or Albany. And so that could impact both the disconnect between their family life and their work life. Is there potential to connect with those districts to see if there could be maybe alignment if they haven't set theirs yet?
Yeah, we tend to set ours first, it seems like, in this community. And so I will be asking Ryan to make sure that that gets communicated out. I've already communicated with the ESD. They asked for a preliminary look at the calendar. So I am moving that way. I think typically on the other end of things, Corvallis has gotten out the latest. Somehow I'm always thinking every district around us is out of school and we're still going. So I am optimistic that this will bring us more into alignment there, and we'll rely on Ryan for some communication with our neighboring districts.
Yeah, that's another aspect of this community. We typically adopt calendars almost a year ahead of everyone else. So we're talking about a calendar for 26, 27. Other people aren't discussing that yet, or for quite some time. But we have community members who reach out quite early. So we've always tried to do at least 2 to 3 years out. But I will make sure that the superintendents in our region understand what we're up to.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments? I just want to agree. I hear about that from like people out in other parts of the state. They're like, you're still in school or you haven't started school yet. But yeah, and so it'll be a shift. So I just want to reemphasize the over communication. I know this is a first read, so it's not adopted yet, but once we get to that stage, that'll be really helpful. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Theater Diversity Advisory Committee, or TDAC report, and we have Kim.
So we don't have a presentation tonight, just are here to answer questions from our cover sheet.
It says there's a presentation. Just kidding. I'm joking. It does say that, but
Well,
it's okay.
let's see what I can.
Okay. That's why I was sitting waiting for the presentation.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
This is theater related. So.
Yeah.
It is.
Impromptu. Yeah. Okay. Any questions based on the report, Brittany?
Yeah, it's more a statement than a question. You know, having been involved with TDAC since its beginning, I still really want to encourage. I see the gains that we have done, we have gotten over the years in terms of procedure, in terms of discipline, in selecting materials, and also casting and so on. What I would like to encourage TDAC to do is to look at the marginalized voices, finding material that's, instead of mainstream, go tell the story. There's quite a few opportunities, well, several opportunities with the fall plays and the spring plays to do that, to advocate for that, because that is, those stories are going away all of a sudden, and it's more important for us to continue to tell the stories of the people in the community. So.
Thanks, Bernie. Any other questions or comments? Good. Oh, did you have one? Yeah, go ahead.
What's next?
Well, yeah, we are really, right now, we're in the middle of Oliver, so opening night is tonight, so please, I hope you'll be able to make it and see. I went last night. It's amazing. Our students, as always, do not disappoint. So that's the first thing that's on the agenda right now. This coming spring, we're intending to work with TDAC to do a review of the DEI guidelines. It is not intention to strip it of any of the intent, but to maybe focus it in a little bit on making sure that it's really clear what we're here to do, and that is to create a very diverse and welcoming and inclusive environment in our theater, and we still have work to do. Marcianne, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I would ditto what Kim said. I think the other thing that we're trying to do is also expand our TDAC group. We've been very fortunate this year that we've been able to add a couple new members that have a lot of experience in theater, and so we just want to continue bringing in more voices and more perspectives into our advisory committee. Yeah. You're welcome.
Go ahead, Bernie.
One more question, since I know we've talked about this before, but will TDAC take a look at stages and how that program is done in the summer?
So I'm working on stages this year, and so our theater manager is actually out on medical leave, and so I will be taking the lead on pulling that together and really focusing in on making sure that it's a positive experience for all of our students, and that we are doing a good job of outreach to make sure that we're getting more participation from marginalized students. The thing that is shown that we did see some increased participation in auditions based on the outreach that we did at our Title I schools. I wanted to point out, which I did not put in here, we did not deny a single scholarship this year. So anybody who requested scholarships to stages was offered that and was able to participate. One of the things that I actually would like to do, we are changing the stages grades. We did incoming first through 8th graders last year, and what we determined is really we need to be focusing in a little bit older. So we're doing 3rd through 8th grade this year. That is because we want to get as many kids as possible before they get into middle school. We want them to participate in middle school theater. That will make them very comfortable to come into our high schools and participate. The sooner they can get access to theater, the more likely they will be to participate. So that's really where we're trying to focus our attentions, is let's get students involved when they're younger, and families that have the means to do camps or classes or lessons. Those are the students that we see participating without a lot of outreach, but we need to be reaching some families who it's just not in their capacity to participate. So we're working hard on that.
Therese?
So that's great that you were able to award scholarships for everyone who applied. I'm curious, because I guess I'm not really sure where it comes from, but how do we fund the scholarships?
So there's multiple ways that we're funding them, and we have out of the theater account supported some of those. So with funds that are coming in from the Stages Camp.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Other question, Shauna?
I don't know if we've actually spelled out for community who are listening, but was curious about ways that students can be or are engaged in TDAC?
Want to answer?
Yeah. So we currently have two amazing students that have been with us for several years, and their voice is so important in our meetings because they bring not only the acting perspective, but also they're part of theater. So they just bring an immense amount of ideas and energy into the group. One of the things that Kim and I have talked about is also, wanting to make sure that we bring in more student voice, and that's something that we're going to try to recruit this year and next year. More student voice, the better. Yeah. Thanks, Shauna.
I would add to that, getting student voice in theater has been a little bit challenging because for a lot of the year, they're busy with theater. And so we're looking at how to pull in some additional youth voices that maybe give a different perspective, maybe even aren't deep into theater, but understand what our mission is getting a diverse, inclusive environment and how to make that a safe environment for everyone. So we've talked about reaching out to SAFE and to other areas to grow that perspective.
And one last thing. One thing, Kim and I, it's so wonderful working with Kim. We have a lot of fun together. But a couple of things is increasing the amount of students that participate in our TDAC. The other thing is that we do a survey. And so at the end of every performance, we do a survey to really capture student feedback and student voice. And something that we've talked about too is going out to the schools and doing some focus groups and really going to the students and asking them what's the experience for them. And their response obviously would help us improve our programming. So, yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have one other thing that I'm going to add that on Oliver this year, we have an assistant director who has not been in the theater program. He has been out at Crescent Valley, but James Murray is the assistant director this year. And so I'm just excited about in the CSD Theaters program, which is the big musical annually, that we're getting some new people in and we're giving some new experiences for students. So we're excited about that.
Thanks. I had one question, and it was I know TDAC has the focus of the report is on racial demographics, and I'm wondering if that work is going to be looking at students with disabilities being reported in here, and gender, and also like linguistically diverse students instead of just people making assumptions of some of the racial categories. And so I'm kind of wondering if that's something that we could potentially see in the future. Or if the intent is just to focus on the racial demographics.
Thank you, Lou. I think that's one of the things that we had when we were putting this together, thinking about how can we expand the intersectionalities of the students that are in our theater department or our theater performances. So that's something that we'll definitely include in the future. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Okay. And we even finished that one. We had a lot of questions on that one, and we're still done on time with that topic. Okay. Yes, because I think we're going to have a lot in the next one, questions and comments. So let's take a 5-minute break. Does that sound okay? We'll take a 5-minute break before we go to our next agenda item. Okay, so we're back, and the next item on the agenda is the Osborne Aquatic Center update, and we have Ryan and Kim. It says you have slides. You do have slides. Okay, we're ready for your slides. Are we ready for your slides? Yes.
'77 as a result of a bond passing by the community. And something that I learned recently is that that was in collaboration with the city and the school district. So that was way back before Measure 5 when we were engaged in recreation activities as well as teaching and learning. In 1998, the Corvallis School District passed a facilities improvement bond, and that did some updates to the interior pool and built Otter Beach. So that's the outdoor, the fun leisure part, and also the lap pool was built at that time. That was about the time that I was hired on with the district. And what I will tell you is that the understanding I have of that is there was an intention behind that bond that we would bring the pool back up to good operating condition, and then the city would take over operation of the pool. So that's when we move on to the next slide. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is that we've learned as we've been doing some work in learning more about Osborne as the pool and as sort of a community gem is that the Osborne has a regional responsibility as well. One of the things that's unique about Osborne is it's a 50-meter pool that's indoors. Oftentimes when folks are building pools right now, they're doing things like wave pools and other sorts of pools as a way to generate money. That's not the case with Osborne. It also has a larger deck than most public pools, and it has grandstands up above. And so in terms of the quality of the pool itself, there is a draw to Corvallis and to using Osborne from swimmers across the region. And so as we think about that, we also recognize that it has a benefit to the community when families come and eat in our restaurants, they stay in our hotels. Most weekends there are meets there, and as you drive by Osborne and LP, the parking lots are packed. And that is because it is a unique resource that happens to be in Corvallis, but is used by the swim community across the state. And even swimmers from other states have come to compete there as well. You take this one.
So now we're going to talk about the operating agreement. So in 1999, when the renovation was complete, the city and district entered into an operating agreement. That agreement laid out that the city was required for daily operations, maintenance, and capital planning for the pool. The capital maintenance, we started an initial reserve account that was the remaining bond funds, was put into an account that the city had access to for capital maintenance. Now the city was outlined that they would annually report back on capital needs for the pool, but the agreement was not clear about who would fund the capital maintenance. It left it a little bit ambiguous. There's that reserve account. It didn't say who would contribute to it. In 2019 is when we as a district saw that there was a requirement for an every 5-year update on the facility condition, and that expired. The last one was in 2017, I believe. And so when Olivia Myers-Book and I met with the pool director at the time, we recognized that there was more and more capital needs coming up. We also recognized that the city was already putting a lot of money into the pool and that we didn't have a lot of money to put towards it. But we, at that point, started sending $100,000 per year to the city to help with those capital maintenance expenses. Yeah, so this is just an idea by year about what kind of expenses they put into it. So things like regular routine painting, replacing fixtures, but there was some really big things that have happened in the last 5 years. So they replaced the The pool liner on the outside pool. I don't know if any of you go. I do, and I have experienced Corvallis versus Albany, and the Corvallis pool, outdoor pool, is amazing. It doesn't tear your feet up, and it's because of that amazing liner. So they replaced the liner. They replaced the roof in 2024, and there's been a lot of other more minor things that have happened over the years, but they're spending, you can see, more than the $100,000 that we're spending. The other thing that I think is interesting that was shared with me is that the operating expenses for the pool are $2.1 million per year, and they bring in $600,000 to $700,000 of fees per year. So the city is subsidizing that other piece of it.
And I think the reason why this is important to share is to highlight the fact that while we're making contributions out of a school district budget, the city is also making significant contributions, and it's important to note that because it has continued to be a partnership and working along one side alongside each other to try to keep that pool open to not just to our swimmers but to the community, and again having it as a community resource. I'll let you take this one and then I'll take the next couple.
So in September, and I didn't actually line it out about the operating agreement. I just want to say for the record, we own the pool. The city operates the pool. That's what that operating agreement was about. So structural failure. In September, the city was doing some maintenance on the pool, interior natatorium. They were up in the roof level and somebody saw the rust. And the rest is where on the inside of the building, there are two roof structures. There's an interior steel structure, and most of that steel is powder coated because it is a corrosive environment. So it's coated and to avoid rust and any deterioration. That interior structure connects to the exoskeleton. So if you've driven by the pool, you notice there's this metal like scaffolding structure on the outside, and together that holds up the structure of the pool. So where the exoskeleton meets the interior steel structure is an area that is not treated because it has to be, it had to be welded together. So I don't want to get too detailed, but a pool has a lot of heat and a lot of humidity. So the roof is designed to allow some of that to escape through the roof. When that heat and humidity escapes through the roof, that exterior exoskeleton is a hollow tube structure. And as that heat and moisture passes by it, you get condensate that runs down the inside of those hollow structures. As that condensate runs down, it comes right to where it connects with the interior steel structure, and it creates rust and corrosion. So this was discovered in September. City immediately contacted an engineer. Engineer said, I'm not going up on that roof till you get it secured, because they could stick a screwdriver right through it at that point, at the location that they had discovered it. So the city had to hire a shoring company, not an inexpensive venture. Shoring company comes in and basically builds a structure scaffolding inside the natatorium. And in order to do that, you had to drain the pool. And so we've got these structural supports that sit right in the liner of the pool to keep the roof from failing. An engineering report was hired, and the result of that was that it is a failure that has to be fixed, and rough estimates for the repair, which I want to really emphasize rough because it's very early for us to have a number, but $2.5 to $4 million just for the roof repairs. As we have made the attempts to shore up, the city made the attempts to shore up that roof by draining the pool, by just the mere fact that the last major renovations to the pool were done in 1998-2000 timeframe. There are a lot of other concerns that are now coming forward. So when you empty a pool, the liner of the pool is meant to be full of water at all times. It's a plaster material. Being dried out for even a month can cause serious damage, and that pool liner was already at the end of its life expectancy. So now what we're working on is what's the actual cost of bringing not only the roof back into good operating condition, but now we have a lot of other concerns coming up about what's it going to really take to bring everything else back online. So Any questions about that one? I don't know if we want to do questions now or. Wait.
Yeah, we'll just keep going. So, so we know that we have, that we're the owners of the building. We also know that we don't have the kind of funding that it would take to do a full repair of the building. So we know that we need to work with partners to figure out a community solution for Osborne. It's not a solution that can be held exclusively by the school district or exclusively by the city. One of the things that we have thought a lot about has been that $100,000 allocation that we make annually, thinking about, is there a way that we could combine several years together and at the same time recognize that we wouldn't be doing maintenance every year. So as we try to think about how we can make a contribution to this effort, those are some of the conversations that we're having internally, trying to figure out what's possible. But straight away, I can say that we don't have an additional $4 million set aside to resolve this problem on our own. Even as we've talked about things like our reserves, which we've talked about quite a bit over time, those reserve dollars aren't enough to fix this problem. And we know that based on our budget presentation we had for you last month, that wouldn't be a wise decision to make financially, and one that I wouldn't recommend us making. So we've started some conversations with members of our community. We will have a community meeting coming up. So we have had conversations. This week we held a meeting where we invited the city of Corvallis to participate, Corvallis Public Schools Foundation, Benton Community Foundation, the county, Corvallis Aquatics team, and Oregon Swim, because everyone has a vested interest in Osborne. For Corvallis Aquatics team, I'm sure you've seen the articles about how they've been all over the place trying to get in swim time or water time. That's been the same for our swim teams. So there's an interest there, and recognizing that Osborne is a unique pool in our state. The foundations, both thinking about the philanthropic arm of these efforts, and then also with the county and the city, thinking about other municipalities and how do we come together in such a way that there's the possibility that we can come up with the funds or raise the funds or somehow address this gap in our community opportunities that we see right now. So our plan is to send out information to the community coming in March is our plan, to talk a little bit about what the problem is, what our situation is, and also get some feedback from community about ideas and suggestions on how to move forward. And then to have a community meeting, again, gaining input from community members, and that would include our partners as well. So it wouldn't be a school district meeting per se. It would be a partners meeting, and asking community members for their input as again we try to come up with a way to generate the resources we need to take care of Osborne. Questions?
Okay, who wants to go first? I'm sure there's questions. Okay, go ahead, Bernie.
Ryan, what is the position of the city and county at this point in terms of cost sharing or bringing the facility back online, considering this is such a major recreational outlet for the community?
Yeah, I can't speak for them directly, but I can say that they have come to the table and been willing to have these conversations and talk about how we resolve this together. So we're working in partnership, trying to come to a resolution. The county plays a different role than the city potentially, but again, thinking about all of our partners. And the other piece with the list that I provided, if there's other community partners who are interested in being part of the conversation, it's not an exclusive group. We're open to other members and other people who have ideas and suggestions about how to address the need.
So I guess I have two questions. You had said earlier that the general maintenance and running of the pool was costing about $2.1 million a year, yet the pool fees were only bringing in about $600,000 to $700,000, which explains why we have to help support them.
Yeah.
My question is, or one of them is, if we were to allocate this funding and sort of conduct these repairs, would that reduce the overall maintenance costs for a time being? If it's in newer condition, would it require less maintenance? And then secondly, going forward, do we have any idea how long it would be till it would need this extensive level of maintenance again, or how long these repairs would be expected to last without significant maintenance?
Yeah, those are questions we are working through right now. We need to have more time with contractors to provide us with proposals, and in some ways we need to understand where our community's at with regards to repairing Osborne, because there are some short-term fixes that are different than long-term fixes, and those costs are different. But at the same time, we know that if we're looking for the support of the community, my guess is that people will say we need to fix it completely, so we know that we don't have extensive maintenance for.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Shauna, did you have one too?
Thanks so much, Ryan and Kim, for the presentation and update. Ryan, you mentioned, of course, other community partners are absolutely welcome in those spaces. And I'm wondering about strategic or intentional outreach to some of the big employers in the area, especially thinking about those who might have community giving arms, Hewlett-Packard, Samaritan, OSU too.
Yeah.
If there's any thought around some intentional outreach to bring some of those partners in, especially who have, who are major employers in the area, who may really have a lot of care for quality of life for the folks that live in the community that they support too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then groups like the Chamber and Visit Corvallis, again, because we know that those meets have an economic benefit to our community that we're missing out on right now. Yeah.
Other questions, Judah?
When we're thinking about community partnership, I know that there have been there's a number of outside sports leagues that used
what was and with Swim Oregon. So those are the three we've had so far. But we're open to other having conversations with other community groups that are have been utilizing that space. Something you wanted to add?
Well, the one thing that I was going to add to that is there are over 1,000 daily regular users of the pool that live right here in our community. And so that ranging from exercise classes to swimming lessons to you name it. And so I think that that's an important piece to remember, is that a lot of our users are not an organized group. They are individuals.
Chris?
I know this is not a popular thought, but have there been any discussion around bringing it to the taxpayers?
I think that we have to consider all options. There was a bond that allowed us to do the repairs and create Otter Beach. At the same time, we have to be cautious as we think about the ability of our community to pay those fees. We also are fortunate that we have a community that supports our local option levy, and that which is the equivalent of 50 teachers. And so we have to be able to have a better sense from the community if that's really what they're looking for before we would bring anything like that forward. But those are the considerations as we think about something like that.
Is the discontinuation of the aquatic center potentially at risk, or is there a number of ways that we could potentially still, renovate it?
Yeah, so right now the city is working with Parks and Rec to get the outdoor swim area open, so Otter Beach and the lap pool outside, and utilizing some of the changing rooms. So the city is working on that right now. So that's a possibility. That's something that's going to happen. It's the interior pool, the two pools inside and then the auditorium. That's the piece that we don't have a fix for right now.
Brittany?
Yeah, following up on Kim's point, a lot of people use the pool. Has there been thought or discussions on a capital fundraising campaign, sort of like pay $100, you get a brick with your name on it type things.
Yeah, well, that's why we invited the Benton Foundation and Corvallis Public Schools Foundation. Asked what are the solutions, short-term, long-term. So if somebody was to want to purchase a brick in that example, they would have a good sense about what that meant in the short and long term. And those are the pieces we're still working through.
Go, Therese.
You mentioned that we've got the known issues, and we have you talked about, or who would you consult to figure out if we reach that point?
You want me to take that one, or do you want?
Either way.
I've been doing some.
Okay, I'll talk to that one. As we were doing our bond work, one of the numbers that we came up with is 75% of the cost of replacement is kind of that tipping point. And so the city right now is working on a facilities condition assessment. That's the first step, is to get a pool firm in there to say, what is it that we need to do to be able to operate that building? I think our community is going to want to know what's the short term. And if we do a huge investment in this pool, we may want to consider what would a 20 to 30 year life expectancy be? What would we be expecting for repairs that would be needed to make that happen? I know that the Parks and Rec Department is taking the lead on that, and there are pool consulting firms that are pool engineers, basically, that can come in and do that work. I've consulted with one on my own recently to talk about, will the pumps even be viable? Yes, the pumps can be viable as long as we're heating the space. So it's not to say that all the equipment is null and void because it's been empty for this amount of time, but there are some things like the liner that will have to be addressed. And so getting that report feels like a very first step in figuring this puzzle out. And then certainly doing that assessment about what is it? Are we at 75% of replacement costs, or are we, in a viable place to just come in and do some rehabilitation of the pool?
And so will the firm be able to give you an idea about the replacement cost compared to?
Yes.
Okay. So that consulting with the one place will give us.
Yes, I know the city's also consulting with some contractors who work on pools and trying to gauge cost estimating as well as the assessment of what all needs to be done. So
okay,
I feel
thanks.
like they're in the right direction.
Go ahead, Reed, then Sammy.
Thank you. I guess this is sort of a question, also sort of a comment. As a school representative, I feel like I do want to represent the importance of this space to our students in our community. It's not just the Corvallis aquatic team that takes advantage of this. It's both CV and CHS's swim teams that use this space and are currently without it throughout their season this year, which has adversely affected them. Our swim team has been significantly smaller this year. They've been dealing with practice conditions that aren't ideal. Philomath's been very nice to allow CHS to swim there, but we have a coach who is not getting home until well after 10 p.m. at night because she has to ride the bus with her swimmers to Philomath and then ride back and then wait till every last student gets picked up from CHS. And so if parents are late, she has to stay up late. As a former swimmer, I know how much she hates that. But anyway, I also just want to say my question side of this is I would imagine, and I'm sure that there's a number of students and staff within our schools who would want to support these efforts. So as we're holding these conversations and we're having these more public meetings, have there been efforts made to sort of involve students, especially those involved in the swimming program, in being able to participate in helping to fundraise, helping to spread the awareness, and also helping to make decisions maybe or get involved in the conversations about the futures for funding, like with Benton County Foundation and the other organizations?
Yeah, I see that as a next step for us for sure. Once we have more clear information to be able to say, this is the ask, this is the need, and this is what it does for our community, then I think that would be fantastic. I also think that's true not just in Corvallis, but because this is a regional pool, that I've thought a lot about even other swim teams reaching out to their reps and legislators throughout Oregon, because there's teams from all over the state that come here and need access to Osborne. And so I've been thinking about it, not just about Corvallis kids, but really statewide, because I'm not being over, overly dramatic by saying people use it from all over and need it from all over. It's like one of 2 pools in Oregon that have this kind of usage. And so there's a whole swim community that is has had to switch gears to try to address swimming all season long.
How can the school board and city council be of support at this stage?
I think that we need to be able to look for partnerships and opportunities. And I think that is the way that I could see the most value and help. When we met with the small group the other day, we asked who isn't at the table. And I think we need to continue to think about that and to think about avenues of resource or grant to be able to bring it back online.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would add to that I think something that's really important is that we encourage not just those people who are really into our swim teams, but everybody has a vested interest in this. So when we're asking for community input, to encourage all community members to remember that their kids, their grandkids, they may have a need for rehabilitation in the therapeutic pool in the future. It's everybody. So we want to hear from as many people as possible, not just our, tight-knit competitive swim community.
Don't forget about the dog swim day. People with dogs too.
I go to that.
Okay, see, yeah. It's true though.
I do.
Yeah,
It's fun.
Bernie?
Yeah, for Kim, Orion, what kind of cost are we incurring while the pool is offline? Are we still paying maintenance right now and so on?
So the school district is not, the city is. So they're still providing utilities, and as they gear up to opening up the outdoor pools, they are bringing, they've furloughed staff. So they're working on having to bring staff back, do trainings, all the things associated with that. And it's different kinds of trainings. Lifeguarding an outdoor pool in August is much different than doing it in March. And so there's a lot of things that they're having to consider for this opening that they're planning. But as of right now, we are not incurring those costs.
I did just also want to note for anybody listening that Osborne has accessibility features that just simply do not exist. The pool, and a lot of people use it, but it was a pool that was built with a lot of intentionality that had a huge amount of accessibility that is simply not available anywhere close by.
The pool for a while, and this is probably one of the most forward-thinking, also grounded by data, numbers, what we know, what we don't know, what we need to do to know what we need to know, and how we move forward. I really appreciate this conversation and discussion. We're looking into partnerships and solving the problem, and really envision a future where the kids can and the community can go back to swim. I wonder if we are on the same page on something I don't want to venture into right now, but I think it's important to acknowledge community members are asking about, is the differences between what entails as deferred maintenance and what entails as regular maintenance, and what isn't named as capital improvement, and where what we're doing right now or what we're about to do right now fits in those buckets. I think for this conversation that's forward thinking, we want to, number one, we want to understand how we fix the problem, but I believe the language needs to be consistent with all our partners around what that means. And if the language is not consistent, we just need to acknowledge that there might be different definitions across jurisdictions, because at the end of the day, when we go to the community, to donors or stakeholders, we want to have that consistency in communication and understand what are the revenues of funding that are available or not available. So maybe I'm editorializing here. I just want to acknowledge some kind of confusion in the community around those terminologies, and really thank you for leading in a very good forward-thinking way.
Along those lines of the plan of moving forward, we do think that we, again, as we solve this problem, we want to also create greater clarity around responsibilities, and that is something that would be part of that ongoing conversation and discussion. And we would want to make sure that we're clear about that for community as they.
When was the roof replaced again?
2024.
2024. Okay. And they wouldn't have like that interior part was like, is that like not part of, was it not exposed, or I'm just curious about that, that empty space, if it was exposed during the roof replacement, if that's part of the.
I don't have clarity around that. I have to think that somebody who was going to that level of work on roof repair would address it if they saw it.
Okay. Yeah, I just have questions about that part is all, because I was like, it wasn't that long ago, and for it to get potentially missed, I am concerned about that. But I don't know how to replace roofs, and I don't know how far down they go with it, like what that entails for that kind of facility.
Yeah.
But it was a question that definitely came up for me.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question.
Yeah. The other question is, so we're going to find out if it's going to be cheaper to just build a new pool basically pretty soon is what it sounds like.
We would have a sense of that.
Okay. And then, excuse me, my allergies, I'm so sorry. And then the other one is, no, that was basically the main one was like, and you already answered that around like if it would be cheaper just to do a new facility. And
the thing that I think is important in terms of context for that is that when that pool was built, that was like pre-Measure 5, right? And what that meant is that communities were raising taxes for their local schools, and there wasn't an equalization formula that meant that those funds were evenly distributed across the state. And so in those times, some communities had additional resource. And so for a school district in this day and age to build a pool is not happening. And so I think that that's the reality of K-12 funding these days versus the 70s. And we just happen to be the owners of a pool that was built with solid intention and community support in the 70s.
Yeah. Okay. That would be my other question. If it did need to be replaced, if the city would be interested in just taking the whole thing over at that point, but that'd be down the road kind of conversation. Because, and also like the pool is such a big employer, and you mentioned like staff are furloughed, and I think about how that impacts like the staff that are part of the district families and all of that too. That's, I have a lot of concerns around the larger impacts of the pool, like potentially being down longer, even with the outdoor part open.
I recognize people are feeling some frustration around it, and wanting us to resolve it and have it open quickly. I just don't envision that based on the scope of work at this point.
Yeah, when you all showed the pictures of the inside, I was like, ooh, that doesn't look good. Especially the big
cost is such that it's more than the city can do alone. It's more than the district can do alone.
Right. Dang. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other comments? Okay. Well, thank you all. That is our last agenda item. And with no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 8 p.m. Have a good night, y'all.